Hi. In this video, we're going to talk about why the Stoics would have cautioned us against wanting to live near our children in old age. This idea, while seemingly appealing, can carry many pitfalls. Let's look at how Stoic philosophy helps put this situation into perspective. The Stoics considered autonomy and self-reliance to be the most important aspects of a virtuous life. They emphasized that every person should strive for self-sufficiency and responsibility for his or her decisions, regardless of age. When older people choose to live near their children, they often lose this autonomy by becoming part of their children's lives and ceasing to follow their own path. Example story: Mark and his mother's situation. Imagine the story of Mark and his mother, Anna. Anna, having reached retirement age, decides to sell her house and move to an apartment near Mark's house to be closer to her son and his family. At first glance, this seems like a great solution. The children are always around, the grandchildren visit, and Anna feels useful, helping with the household. However, over time, the situation begins to change. Anna, used to her freedom and habits, begins to feel dependent on her son and his family. She can no longer make spontaneous decisions about how to spend her day, as she constantly expects Mark to invite her to dinner or ask her to look after the grandchildren. She begins to interfere in Mark's family life, giving advice on child rearing and domestic issues, which gradually leads to irritation and conflict. Mark, on the other hand, feels pressured because he now feels responsible for his mother's emotional state and well-being. He loves his mother, but her constant presence prevents him from building personal boundaries and remaining the master of his home. Gradually, Anna begins to realize that she has lost her autonomy and is essentially living someone else's life, trying to adjust to the rhythm of her son's family. From a Stoicism perspective, Anna is trapped in attachment and the loss of her own path. Instead of building her own life and pursuing the things that bring her joy, she became part of her son's life, losing her independence. The Stoics taught that everyone should live according to their virtues and strive for self-sufficiency, even in old age. Anna should have continued to live her life, pursuing her hobbies, going out with friends, traveling, or simply enjoying time alone. This would have allowed her to maintain her sense of self-worth and autonomy, avoiding unnecessary conflict and emotional strain in her relationship with her son. This story reminds us that even in old age, it is important to maintain our personal boundaries and remain the master of our lives. Ultimately, this brings more harmony and respect in relationships with loved ones and helps to maintain the inner peace and self-esteem that the Stoics spoke of. When older people decide to live close to their children, they may have many expectations: constant attention, help, participation in their lives. But the reality does not always meet these expectations, which leads to resentment and disappointment. Example of a story: the story of Elena and her son, Dmitri. Elena has dreamed of being closer to her family all her life. After retirement, she decided to move into a neighboring apartment next to her son Dmitri and his family. Elena expected that they would meet often, spend time together, and that she would be actively involved in her grandchildren's lives. Dmitri, on the other hand, continued to live his busy life: work, taking care of his children, household chores, and was not always able to devote as much time to his mother as she expected. At first, Elena was happy, feeling part of her son and his family's life. She regularly invited them to dinner, prepared treats, and hoped that her son and grandchildren would visit her more often. Gradually, however, her expectations were not met. Dmitri was busy at work. The grandchildren preferred to spend time with friends rather than come to their grandmother. When Dmitri missed dinner or delayed his visit, Elena began to feel resentment and loneliness. She didn't understand why Dmitri didn't devote as much time to her as she expected, and she began to voice her displeasure. Each time, the frustration only grew stronger. Dmitri, for his part, felt guilty that he could not give his mother as much attention as she would have liked, but also felt irritated by her complaints. Stoics, such as Epictetus, emphasize that disappointments arise not from the actions of others, but from our own expectations. In Elena's situation, Stoic wisdom indicates that it is important to manage our expectations and to accept others as they are, not as we want them to be. Expectations that children will always be there for us and fully involved in our lives are unrealistic and often lead to unnecessary suffering. The Stoics advised us to focus on what is in our power, our own actions, thoughts, and reactions. In Elena's case, instead of expecting constant attention from Dmitri, she could focus on her life, finding new hobbies, developing her interests, and building new social connections. This would have helped her avoid resentment and maintain a warm relationship with her son without turning it into a source of stress. Thus, the Stoics taught us not to rely on external circumstances for inner peace. Living close to children can be a source of joy, but only if we do not place expectations on them that they cannot or will not fulfill. It is important to remain grateful for what we have and learn to appreciate every moment without having to control the actions of others. The Stoics emphasize the importance of keeping one's own way and taking responsibility for one's own life. When older people live close to children, there is a risk of becoming an emotional or physical burden. This can create tension and guilt in both parents and children. Stoics would suggest maintaining as much independence as possible so as not to burden loved ones with their own problems. How to maintain healthy relationships. Living close to your children can give the illusion that you are getting closer, but in reality it can cause friction and tension, disrupting healthy emotional distance. Example story. The story of Peter and his daughter, Olga. Peter, having reached retirement age, decided to move closer to his daughter Olga and her family. Olga was glad that her father would be close by. The children would be able to communicate with their grandfather more often, and she would be calmer for his health. At first, everything was going great, but over time, Peter began to interfere in the daily affairs of Olga's family. He began to actively express his opinion about the upbringing of the children, criticized the organization of everyday life, and even tried to solve family conflicts in his own way. Olga loved her father and valued his opinion, but felt that he went too far in violating her personal boundaries. Peter was often offended when Olga did not follow his advice, and this created tension between them. Gradually, Olga began avoiding communication with her father to avoid conflict, and Peter felt that his help and care was being rejected. The concept of emotional distance and support without attachment is important in Stoicism. Stoics, such as Marcus Aurelius, taught that each person is responsible for his or her own life and actions, and that meddling in other people's affairs can disrupt harmony. Peter, wanting to help his daughter, lost his sense of proportion and began to impose his will, which led to the severing of their bond. The Stoics emphasized the importance of respecting the other person's boundaries and recognizing that everyone is entitled to their own decisions and mistakes. Interference, even with the best intentions, can devalue the other person's efforts and cause resistance. Support must come from a position of respect and recognition of the autonomy of the other. In Peter's case, Stoic wisdom would have been to offer help, but not to insist. Rather than interfering with the grandchildren's upbringing or domestic issues, Peter could have supported Olga by simply listening to her, offering advice but without pressure. This would have kept the relationship warm and allowed everyone to live their own lives. The Stoics taught that life is a constant change, and one must be able to accept it. Living near children often meant fearing change, aging, illness, possible loneliness. Instead of fearing this, the Stoics advised accepting change as a natural part of life and not trying to cling to the familiar. This helps to maintain composure and courage in the face of the inevitable. Practical tips for a Stoic approach. Maintain boundaries. Recognize that everyone has a life and respect their decisions. Offer help only when it is asked for. Don't impose your will. It is important to realize that your views and experiences may not be the same as how your children see the world. Support should be unobtrusive. Be an example, not a teacher. The Stoics taught that the best way to influence others is to demonstrate your virtues through practice, not through words and instruction. Respect freedom and autonomy. Support without control and attachment helps maintain healthy relationships and avoid conflict. Maintaining dignity and self-respect. Images of an older person doing what they love. Living near children can sometimes lead to a loss of self-esteem. We feel like we are forever dependent and helpless. The Stoics emphasize the importance of self-respect, regardless of age or circumstances. It is important to keep doing things that bring you joy and to remain an active participant in your life. Life is the art of accepting change and living in harmony with yourself, regardless of external circumstances. Do not forget that your life is in your hands. Support your loved ones, but remain yourself. And remember, your decisions should bring you inner peace. If you liked the video, give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new topics on Stoicism and personal development.